channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9, and all the folks joining us on Party Grenada and Go To Fet Facebook pages. It is a pleasure to have you. This morning, my virtual guest is Farmers and Fisher Folk representative in the Senate, the Honorable Roderick St. Clair. Good morning, Senator St. Clair. How are you, sir?
Okay, this morning. Good morning, Blossom. Good morning to farmers, fishers, citizens, both local and in the diaspora, and of course, all the others listening on to this program. Morning.
Morning once again. This morning, let's start with a recent event that was celebrated without some of the usual pomp and pageantry that we expect. Fisherman's Birthday. That celebration was just last week, and of course, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was not on the magnitude that we have come to expect. But nevertheless, I know there were some activities held to commemorate Fisherman's Birthday 2021. In the midst of that celebration, in wake of the celebration, I should say, what has this year's celebration brought forth in terms of concerns of fisher folk, and maybe some of the greatest things that have happened with our fisher folk over, let's say, for the past year, since Fisherman's Birthday 2020, Fisherman's Birthday 2021?
Yeah, well, I would say, and it continues in a way because whilst the 29th is international, this Fisherman Birthday celebration recognition, of course, the hallmark has been the leader in terms of the celebration starting off. And of course, you'd have the other parishes. So, for example, yesterday, Sunday, St. Andrews, Grenville fishermen had their celebration. I was there part of the evening, with them. And of course, there'll be other parishes that would also be rolling out theirs in time, of course, recognizing all of those constraints. Working along with the fishers, and even right now, we have a group, an interim group that I'm working with to chart the way forward. And some of the key issues, have to do with the issue of training and building the capacity of not only our current fisher folks and CMOS persons, but also other persons that may want to get into the industry, both in terms of the safety, in terms of the fishing techniques, in terms of value addition, processing, so that they can be able to maximize on this important resource, and boat building, seine repairs. All of those are part of the mix. And of course, how do we increase the consumption of our local fish, both in terms of the fresh and of course the value added, whether it's salt fish, as the case may be. And of course, when I speak about that, we speak about all the others, the lambi, the lobster, of course, sea moss, and so on. We also have to look at in terms of the well-being of the fishermen, in terms of, I've been walking along and urging them that they need to look at joining the NIS for their own benefit and for the benefit of their family, something that I know also the Ministry of Fisheries, they're speaking with the PS and the minister there, I know they are also actively trying to get this on board. This is very critical. I think a very good thing that happened with fishers in this past year had been the captaincy training. And only yesterday I was speaking to a couple of the fisher folks in Grenville, and they were saying that this was such a valuable training for them, of course, and the equipment, and so on. But of course, they will still tell me, having the local knowledge and understanding outside of the equipment is very important, because sometimes if your equipment fail on you, you need to go back to basics. So all of those are some of the key things. The issue of increase our communication between the fisher folks and the Ministry of Fisheries is a very important factor. And so that is a major attempt that we are going to work on along with the PS. We should have a meeting sometime this week, and we can look and see how we can improve that mechanism. Because once you have information going, for example, one of the guys was saying to me last night is, fisher folk is, sometimes they're not too sure where things are. They may apply for a loan, they may apply for some support in some project. And of course, sometimes the individuals involved are waiting on the word, but they want to know because they want to know how the business is running. So information flow is an important communication mechanism we have to find. Of course, though, I will commend, as I normally do, the Honorable Minister and her PR team. They are doing an excellent work, as she has also left such legacy in the Ministry of Agriculture. Excellent work, Giselle and her team there. And so it's a matter of improving on that, but there are other information outside of the ministry, for example, maybe some project happening, some loan application thing, so that they can able to be in that mix. So I would say these are some of the key issues. I personally also was involved in the church service and the other celebration involved within the morning and back into the evening. And it was my first time going through the full phase, and I was, very happy with what I saw. And I really want to encourage all of us to support this industry. Of course, an important point you may realize that I've been calling for is the whole issue of the fisheries school. In fact, only I was in cricket a few days ago, and one of the ladies who were there say, back in the revolution, we had the fish, and this came out of general discussion, and we need to try and get this back. And so it is not just on my calling, but this is a calling of people coming to me and speaking about those things. And so this is a very important point that we will address later on, how I intend to move forward with that angle. Mm-hmm.
And the last time you were here, we promised to delve a little bit deeper into a serious concern of our farmers, that of predial larceny, an issue that is not going away and continues to plague our farmers, and is also a disencouragement for our farmers. Since the setting up of the predial larceny unit, which is a part of the RGPF, has that unit made any inroads at all in dealing with the issue of predial larceny?
All right, so let me just have so that we get to our listeners in tune properly. We have to understand the construct. We have the Predial Larceny Act, which was there many years ago, I think in the 60s or the 50s, as the case may be. I don't have it exactly in my head right now. They did. However, in 2020, there was an upgrade, and the upgrade essentially, as we mentioned, would have addressed things like SORSOP and protected item and increased some of the penalties. But, we could do all of those things, but if we don't have the boots on the ground, which is what we've been complaining about, then we would have challenges. Now, I've been doing some serious research over the weekend because we need to kind of figure out sometime what really is the extra detail. So I did some extra work on the weekend, researching, reading, analyzing, calling a few folks. And what came out to me, and it is very important and very instructive, that we have the Predial Larceny Task Force. That is the gentleman in green. They comprise of what we refer to as rural constables, and this was further confirmed with me. I was very happy to meet the Commissioner of Police out at cricket on Saturday. So we had a little chit chat, doing business one time amidst the entertainment, and it was very instructive, our discussion. And so that confirmed certain questions I had mentally, that the Predial Larceny Task Force individuals are really part of the police force, right? As rural constables. Whether they should be rural constables is another story, but they are within the command of the force. Now, the other part of it, you also have some of these individuals that are within the Imani program, not to show how much they are right now. And so that brings another dynamics in terms of they're not really being a police officer with that sort of connect. They're basically civilians. And so how do we convert them is one angle. And how do we empower the commissioner so that he can be able to have more resources at his disposal so that he can do what he's supposed to do? Because despite the Ministry of Agriculture is associated with the act, the real enforcer is the police. And so you might have heard me calling on the commissioner to do things. But the commissioner, from my discussion and from my understanding, and we understand that too, the guys doesn't have vehicles, they don't have this, they don't have that, they are limited numbers. So really and truly, the commissioner hands is tied. And we need to increase the budgetary allocation for the commissioner and the police force so that they can better able to address this matter. Now, has he submitted a plan in terms of the resources that he needs? I cannot say. We didn't have that discussion, but these are some things that we would follow up on downstream. So it is my intention, which already did, is to submit a motion for the next sitting of the Senate, and I trust the timing is appropriate, so I'm waiting on some feedback, regarding increasing funding to the police, specifically to support the pre-larceny function. You know, for example, if you look at the expenditure budget, the budget document of the government, the police vote, I think it's number 10 or something like that. It is. When you look at it, you're seeing for fire, you're seeing for law and order and different names. And I would assume that, and I don't have the detail there, that pre-larceny would fall within one of those items, but it didn't specifically say pre-larceny. So sometimes when you, I wouldn't say hide, but when you don't pull out things and separate them, they get lost in the mix. And it's very difficult, again, to monitor it. It's very difficult to provide support, very difficult to even know if you're making progress. And so I believe that we need to not only increase the resources, but if we pull it out and we have it separate as a line item, pre-larceny, we can know we put in $500,000, $250,000, and we know it is to hire 10 staff, to get 2 vehicles, to provide equipment, etc., so that they would be better able to do what they're supposed to do. So really and truly, I'm calling on the farmers, I'm calling on the nation to call on the government to make such funds available. I know the budget already passed. Sometime around now, July, you can have different reallocation of funds. And also we could have supplemental budget and requests. And I don't think it's something that is unnecessary. It's a critical thing, just as any other input for agriculture. It's not only fixing the roads and doing farm labor support, but this also is support, because we can do all the farm labor support and increase all the production and make a big market for thieves, and the police cannot do anything about it. So sometimes when we're planning and implementing, we have to think in that broad and systemic approach to have a net positive at the end of the day. So this is the direction we want to address, and I think we make a good inroad in kind of zeroing in there, and I'm very happy with where we're going with this.
Is another way of dealing with pre-larceny, is another way of doing that arming our farmers, giving them more leeway, more authority in defending their property, defending their produce?
Well, I think we have to try not to make our farmers security officers and police officers. Whereas, of course, we do have a lot of farmers who are police officers and security officers. We don't want our farmers to be security officers and having to be spending time figuring how to handle a gun and all of these things, and buying a gun is a costly event. So we have to be careful about that. At the same time, I understand very well the need and the urge. But of course, if nothing has been done, the consequence would be greater. Now, if you maybe put $1 million more towards the police to support specifically this, so we could have more persons on the ground, more support system. Think about it. Versus, we don't make gun in Grenada. We have over 7,000 farmers. Now, whether they get a gun illegally or legally is another story. And if you look at the cost of a gun, I don't own a gun, so I don't know the cost of a gun, but the last time I had a gun could be as much as $4,000, $5,000. If you do the maths, 5,000 or even 3,000 times 7,000 farmers. If you do the math, you realize the input bill for guns is much more than putting in $1 million to address a serious issue. So sometimes we have to look at it in those contexts. Yeah? So I wouldn't say that we need to go there. Now, you have to understand, back then when we had large estates, you had what you call the watchman. And the watchman may have had the pillow tree, or whatever they call it back then, a tree, and try to manage that. But of course, people say, well, we need to manage downstream, the vendors and who are buying us. All of this is good, and the registration, all of those things. But we can turn around and put the same analogy and say, well, if that's the case, then why do we have all these health wardens? Why do we have all this traffic police? Why do we have the drug squad? Why do we have, in some cases, you need to have persons to monitor and to be on the ground and to have a presence, because that is just part of managing that whole system, to deter. That is what they really want, to deter. You don't really want to hold anybody, but it's to deter. If you know the police is keeping guard in a certain place, you'll try to avoid it. And if you try to avoid it, then it means that the chances to reduce, because the food security of this country could be seriously jeopardized as farmers get frustrated. Even our financiers will be scared to even provide finances. And also the food security itself, where farmers might be tempted to taint products and all of those stuff, and then it affects our whole tourism industry. It also affects our whole export. So I'm putting in those rationales, and they're not sensational. And so the authorities that are listening, maybe we don't even need to get to the motion, and action might be taken before, because the effect and the consequence is more significant and long-lasting than maybe an extra $1 million. Because if you look also at the budget allocated to the police, I was looking at it, it basically was defunded by about $1 million, almost $2 million. When you look at the total, while some areas might have slight increases, but the total was down by about $2 million. So maybe $1 million added back might have been able to solve the problem, because it's a very critical factor for us.
Even with a more financial push, there's only so much the police can do, / the pre-larceny unit can do. And I remember there were discussions, plans for us to be more forceful with ensuring farmers can identify themselves, whether it be through the use of ID cards or so on. How much of a role can that play in ensuring we as in customers are not lending a hand to the pre-larceny that is taking place island-wide?
Well, this is a very good point, and I like how you put it, in that having the ID in selling. So even if you buy from someone, as a vendor, or you buy from a farmer direct, let me see your ID. These days, if you go to the bank to even deposit money, you have to have your ID. You have to even almost show that you are your citizenship. So, and this is not food. Here we're talking about food that you're eating. You need to know that it's not tainted for your own security, that you're buying it from someone who grow it, who actually have that whole access. Of course, they speak about issuing memorandas and receipts when you sell and buy and so on. But the ID is a very important instrument that can be used. Again, we are drivers, we're on the road, the police stop us, where is your driver's ID? But for food, which is critical for our own survival, which we put in our stomach, which could kill us because of, we don't know if it was tainted or anything, that we don't even know the source of. Why can't we do that? The Ministry of Agriculture claims told me in our last sitting of the Senate would have said they have 7,070 registered farmers. Whether each of them has an idea, I cannot tell you, per se, but at least we have some progress in terms of that direction. The question is that we have to, as individuals, enforce that sort of request, as you rightfully said. That's very smart of you, that statement you make. Yeah.
Why, thank you. Data and statistics for our fisher folk, and maybe farmers as well. What sort of data do you have as the farmer and fisher folk representative in the Senate, in terms of what our farmers do, how they do it, and how successful the industry is?
Yeah, well, it's, and you make the important point. That's how successful industries, because we can only able to know when we can measure, when we have we have data that we can analyze, and that is a weakness we have. We may have data in different places, and it's almost like private data. You write a report for the minister, you submit a report to the cabinet, you go and give a big speech in some training, and but in terms of being readily available to, let's suppose you want to look at the trend of some production for the last 20 years in Grenada, it's difficult. Maybe you want to see, and of course, if you're going fishing, in fact has a lot of data, landing data, because a lot of this data is collected. But where it's residing, in the format it's reside, and also how available it is. I mean, we can sit in Grenada and click onto Trinidad, into Barbados, into the US, into Guyana and Belize, and we can pull data down there is something called the UN trade maps, I think it is. And when you go in there and the UN trade and you can see data, but a lot of the data that you see, for example, export data and import data and so on, is what we refer to as mirror data. So in that, Grenada in itself is not reporting a lot of statistical information. For whatever reason, I'm not too sure. We have a very good Asicuda system. So for example, let's suppose I export 5 million pounds of bananas to somewhere in Europe. I could get the data that Europe showed that 5 million pounds of banana came from Grenada, but Grenada cannot show me that data if I go online and check it out because we didn't report that data. So we are negligent and are not too sure what is the reason. So this is another discussion, and it's beyond necessarily the Department of Statistics. It may also have to do something with trade, also have to do something with custom. So that is one angle. We're just talking trade. But then internally, for example, we have the census data, right? We have the poverty data. We have some labor force data. And so I myself sometimes go online and go on ILO and then you see dash, dash, dash. And I say, no, where is the data for Grenada? Of course, the Ministry of Agriculture would have done a census sometime in 2012, 2010, sometime there. We're supposed to have another census coming up. And if you need data, you have to literally call the ministry and try to get them to give you some data, somebody had to manipulate it. Well, they should be able to go, click, sign in with something and get this data. Now, if you realize the government would have sometime last year launched its website with all sort of innovation. But if it's not providing data for you, so I mean, of course, you could get a report, you could get the budget, you could get certain things, but pulling down certain statistics is key. So then you find a lot of times you have to write projects, you have to go to donor agencies to get certain, and a lot of time is spent fighting to get it, and then it becomes like a burden now for the public servant where most of this data reside, because not necessarily through their fault, but through systemic failure. So I think that they need we have to look at how do we make this data available in some forms, and we can start in simple terms and go forward. Now, this thing about personal data, I mean, Blossom, if we do a survey and we do a census data, nobody knowing Blossom says this and this when I pull on an aggregate and say persons between the age of 25 and 50 years who are religion, who by occupation, because all of those are important in farming and trending projects into the future. So if you want to have a development plan for the next 10, 15 years, it have to be based on the trends you're seeing, the projection, and all of those things. So we need to really, and this is something I'm going to do some more work on, and so that we can better able to, and of course, people will speak about production data, market data for our farmers, for the supermarkets, and all of those persons. Even the airlines, we need that because right now, we have these challenges with freight outside good live in the country. With even more data, we can able to further project and show, and create market opportunities. So someone could say, okay, yeah, this is the sort of production, these are the market opportunities. I could bring in a plane and make it available for our farmers and fisher folks. In the absence of the data, you have to be picking up your phone and calling around. Tom, how much do you have? Oh, well, this is just hearsay. How consistent is this? Well, it's not official because the Ministry of Agriculture, the government didn't provide that data. And so they wouldn't report it. They would have it like a hearsay information. So that is a key. And anytime data start becoming hearsay, it becomes suspect, even if it's true.
All right. Let's take a break, Senator St. Clair, and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. Speaking with fishermen and farmers representative in the Senate, Senator Roderick St. Clair. To the point, we'll be right back.
Montreal, it's time to line virtually one more time. Gemma Rayburn Baines here for Spice Island Cultural Festival, a celebration of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. This summer's festival is a celebration of life with food, fashion, music, and culture. Join us online Saturday, July 10th, 3 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube at Spice Island Cultural Festival. Info, spiceislandculturalday.com.
Do you hear what I hear? Listen to the ocean, and you will hear a cry for help. The ocean is hurting, and we are the source of the hurt. But we can stop and start to heal our ocean by preventing pollution from getting into our waterways. It can start with you. Join an active organization, or better yet, make a personal commitment. Commit not for just one day in the year, but for the rest of your life. Let's dispose of our plastic and other waste responsibly, and let's start building resilience. Let the healing begin.
This message is brought to you by the OECS Commission with funding from the Government of Norway. Remlit, tackling ocean pollution from tooth to tooth.
COVID-19 spreads from person to person through the droplets that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes, which makes it easy to spread between people in close contact. Now let's get prepared to stay healthy.
To reduce your chance of catching or spreading COVID-19, practice these simple everyday preventative measures. Droplets can also land on surfaces, so ensure that you wash your hands frequently for a minimum of 20 seconds or sing the happy birthday song twice. Avoid touching your feet.
Welcome back to the Point, speaking with Farmer and Fisherfolk representative in the Senate, Honorable Roderick St. Clair. Before we go to our viewers and listeners, there was an issue I recently heard about, Senator, in terms of there not being enough freight for our farmer and fisherfolk exporters and the goods that they want to export. How much of an issue is this? How close are we to solving that problem?
And that is a huge issue. I mean, only on the weekend I had from two different exporters sending me some photos of losses that they would have had, particularly in Sorosop, which is a very perishable item. Kalalo, I think, was also involved in the photos that they would have purchased from farmers, and they was not able to export it because of challenges with the airline. Amerijet is the main one involved here for different technical issues as reported. They were unable to come, then they would come, and then the flight change, and so almost 4 days. So by the time they really arrive, you literally have to buy new produce all over again if you have money to ship. So that is a big issue, and of course we have the reduction in the flights of American airline. The size of the plane is also a challenge. Amerijet has also reduced its size of the plane and also unreliability. So these are big challenges that our agriculture sector is facing. So over this weekend, between this week that passed, exporters will have lost significant amount of money. Now, in the case of fish, the exporters could always pull it back and freeze it and then sell it locally. They also would have lost money based on the prices that they would have paid the fisher folks in advance for the product. How do we address this? we've been speaking to one of the local agents here who we are exploring the opportunity of a charter. Of course, it would come at a higher price, but at least we might find a tripartite way to address this so that at least farmers could be able to sell the product, exporters could export, and the country could bring in monies. Because we're speaking here, Blossom, of over 300 plus persons directly involved in the industry in terms of working. We're talking about hundreds of farmers who supply those products. We're speaking about close to about $600,000 plus or minus that would involve in any 1 week of monies to farmers and monies to workers. And of course, when you export, you will get more revenue, of course. So we could speak about almost losing a fair amount of money into this country. I know that I was spoken with the Minister for Agriculture. Also, I know there is some movement happening with getting a bigger plane through some charter arrangement. Within the week, I would make some other communication and see how we could find that, I would say, a negotiated position. You know, some persons may say, well, you know, we should buy a plane. We had a plane before one. We can go on all of those nice discussions, but sometimes when the reality is that you have to find that approach to dig us out, because, you know, how long can an exporter keep buying goods, cannot sell, and you'd end up with no money eventually, you know, and he could easily be out of business and we can suffer. Now, the government cannot just get a plane in the morning and make it available. You know, if Amerijet has a challenge with one plane, I mean, how do you fix that? They need to have more reliable planes, you know, but we need to look at a more systematic approach, because what the exporters are saying to me is that even if the reliability happens, they have more capacity to export than the capacity that the planes are bringing in. Now, some folks speak about, okay, let's look at the JetBlue and those sort of what I call tourism planes. They try to stay away from cargo because that has its own implications. And of course, they wouldn't necessarily take cargo, even if they might be going to New York, which is a good destination. And there's another discussion about Caribbean Airlines. They seem to have some challenges locally for various reasons, which I don't have the exact details. But we need to sometimes take control. If we have the goods as business persons, which the exporters are, and they can get a good rate, and government can provide some support in that mechanism, we can do well for our farmers. And also that would help to reduce pre-elasticity too, because when the items hang around, you know, and the farmers can harvest it in time, because they're not sure if they're going to have any export. Because there are farmers who also harvest goods and bring it for the exporter. So say, no, sorry, you know, the plane is not going, so we cannot take it. What happened to this farmer? You know, and he basically has a contract because I tell him to bring it. But really and truly, I cannot export it, so should I really take it? And these are the sort of challenges that we see happening with this matter right now. And we need to look at it very seriously.
At this point in the program, let us go to our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns. This is your chance to ask them. The landline number 435-2041. The WhatsApp number is also 435-2041. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp, and you can post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Let's go to our first caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom.
Morning.
Good morning to Mr. Clair. Number one, if so much mangoes in season, every year mangoes and all those things wasted. Why directly? They couldn't get all the mangoes marketing board or somewhere and juice the mango and put it in big bottles and send it to Trinidad, because they're using this. I'm sure they will buy it in Trinidad because they're using the same thing and send it back to us in different juices, like mixed with guava, mixed with this, mixed with that. So I guess they could do that and juice it out and send it to Trinidad in big bottles instead of sending the raw mangoes. Number one. Number two, the agriculture people, those directly that don't want to be vaccinated, how are they going to deal with them? Because the problem is a lot of places saying that you must be vaccinated for your corn for they sell the goods. So those that don't want to take the vaccine, how are you going to deal with the produce? If somebody going to go and how are they going to get it sell? I mean, how are you going to collect it? How are you going to happen? Because they just don't want the vaccine, which the vaccine is very important for everybody. Because some people think when you take the vaccine, they're going to kill you, but that's not true. You have people, you could take the vaccine and after 2 years you die, maybe 6 months you die, and people are going to say, because you take the vaccine, but you don't have to be. That's your time just reached. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Senator?
Yeah. Two very, very important points there. The issue of agro-industrialization, the issue of value added. I know MNIB is working towards that aspect. Of course, MNIB does some level of juicing already, but I know they want to increase their capacity. I know there is some discussion over that plant in La Sagesse. I don't have the exact detail, but I know there is some movement there with the Minister of Agriculture and exploring how they can get it back within control. And of course, I think the MNIB mix into that will be very helpful. At the same time, we have to know that not any mango can be very good for juicing. The mango should not be falling on the ground and get damaged, because that would also compromise the quality at the end of the day. So there are other mix we have to look at. And of course, there's nothing wrong with innovation, with having several different varieties of mango mix to make a juice that have some unique special flavor. So, use it in cocktails and other things like that. So, yes, Carla, I think we are very shy when it comes to those utilization. Of course, we put our hands up and we speak about electricity costs and all of those things. But I think that we have a lot of opportunities that we shy away from, and lacking that whole wheel. But of course, as policymakers, government, we have to encourage, show, hold the hands. And if we believe, and so the Bureau of Standards, the Produce Chemist Lab, is my understanding from the budget speech and presentation, that should be much more active in this current space. And they also have the facility to enable certain small scale processing taking place there. So I think we need to move that more. I mean, I worked there, that was my first work many years ago, and the amount of things that were happening in the lab, and the lab was much smaller than now. Of course, I think the staff might be reduced now, but we are doing a lot of more things then. So I always ask myself, what has happened? Someone said to me the same thing yesterday, say, what has happened? What has happened with the same fishing school? What has happened in agro industry? And they always go back to the days of the revolution. And some people say, I'm a revolutionary because I'm only going back there. But this is the truth of what is happening. So we need to go back and see what went wrong. Why did we give it up? Is it because persons changed? Is it because of policy position? Is it because those equipment weren't good anymore? So sometimes we have to look and see and see those things, because we don't like to go back and look at history. We don't like to engage persons of the past who may have said, look, this is why this happened, so we can learn and fix. Sometimes a guy retired, and the push that the person had is no longer there by the new individuals, and so he just dropped off the shelf. Simple like that. Not that it was a bad idea. And the issue of the vaccine and person selling is an important point that the caller made, because, of course, we realize the trend that is happening in terms of taking the vaccine and receiving the vaccine. And so sometimes even using the word taking the vaccine sounds like as if you're subjecting yourself to some kind of thing. The issue is that there's a vaccine that is available. There are many types that are available. The country has different, has one, the AstraZeneca, available for persons to protect themselves, so that it's not going to stop you from getting the virus, but of course it's going to reduce your symptoms and so on like that. As is said, there are pluses and minuses in the debate. I think individuals have to consult with the doctors. They have to look at it, look at the risk, look at the high risk, look at the low risk, So it's not a matter of forcing, but persons must be able to make those decisions based on information. And persons need to actively get information too, and not just sit back and make a decision because a failure to go and get information. I think that is also very important. I could see the fallout of this. Of course, there might be some who say, then I cannot go and sell my product. So what happened to me and my constitutional right, and all kind of different things could come up. But I think we have to educate ourselves. I know there are some persons that are saying, look, I'm waiting for the Cuban type, I'm waiting for this type. But I think this is something that I think from the government end, I have to show the mechanism for the procurement and the access of the vaccine. But, people like different varieties. Even in soft drink, I just use an example, not the best example I usually say soft drink, but in different beverages, in even the clothes you wear, the colors, people have different choices. Because if they're all going to do the same thing, then give the options. And I think this is what some people are saying. So give them the options. So some people might leave Grenada and go away because they would prefer another option than the option that is been available. Not that it necessarily is a bad one, a good one. And then sometimes people don't like things, but the vaccine is for our betterment. I have taken the vaccine. I've taken my 2 doses from the early set. Some but they are back to normal. This is a managed situation. It's a very important point that Clair make. Very important.
Let's go to YouTube, not YouTube, WhatsApp, a WhatsApp question. Somebody on WhatsApp is asking, given the importance of farming and agriculture to our well-being, what do you see as your role in advising the government about the state of our infrastructure to mitigate the potential economic and personal injuries from flooding, landslides, etc.? Don't you think government need to be proactive in maintaining adequate drains, culverts, etc.? Will you be so kind as to formally remind the government?
Yeah, well, yes, we can formally. We could also have a motion in the parliament, and we could do all of those. And I think the call is very. What it's saying is a key thing, because in agriculture we speak a lot about better management at the farm level. How do we manage our drains and all of those things, or drainage or landscape and so on? It's good, but when you look at that next consequence. Right? For example, the floods we have in the road, the floods in Grenville, and so on. It's not caused because of agriculture. A lot of this damage that we've seen, and especially floods and like, is because of construction of buildings, which increase the water flow in certain areas. I mean, and this increase in water flow creates its own challenges. Now, how do you divert this water? So that whole thing is not. I don't think we are looking at the consequence. Not that the drainage is not good, not that the building is not good, but how do we mitigate and how do we plan for those occurrences? Maybe when rain season finishes, we pray and we say, okay, we go through dry season, let's pray that it's okay. And then we come back again, rainy season come, and we're busy about ourselves. And for example, the St. John's River matter, this is a matter that has been, project that has been going on for the longest while. I don't know what, sometimes there is a stall and then there is a flood and then you see something come and some bulldozer come and scrape the ground and then they say, oh no, we are always getting for the next. And this is why, Blossom, this is why the whole issue of understanding government plans and timelines and all of those things is very important. And it comes back to the same point that the Fisher folk was raising. They need to know when things are happening, how things are happening, so they can better able to see. But the first thing is able to ensure that something exists. And when you see it, then you can able to know whether or not it's happening. So the color is a very important point. That is made. Mm-hmm.
All right. Facebook. Somebody on Facebook asks, what plans do you have to help in the development of Aileron, which is very fertile due to volcanic soil, where everything planted would grow, but don't have the government of Grenada's support even in the droughts? Not even the Coast Guard will bring water for the settlers there, who depend only on rainwater to live and to provide water also for their animals. The question, what are you planning for Aileron to help the farmer and fisher folk who need the help, and would you visit there to see how life is on the island?
Yeah, I did. Someone would have raised that previously, and I would not have made progress on that grounds. And maybe if this individual can give us a contact that we can connect to the Aileron folks, it's an important matter. As I mentioned previously, I remember our late George Bizan would have, when the Minister of Agriculture, would have gone on one of his visiting trips to farmers, would have visited that specific island, Aileron. I'm aware that they do very good agriculture there, watermelons and all of those things. And so I would like to engage, and we have all these climate smart agriculture projects, and I think that what can happen out of this, and I would engage Mr. Campbell at that project to see how we can treat them. I wouldn't say as a special case, but it's as a case study because it's island on its own, and how we can maybe design mechanisms, rainwater harvesting and so on to assist them in this regards. Of course, in the long dry season, you mentioned the Coast Guard wouldn't go to give them, but I'm not sure, maybe in Awassa that need to. Maybe so we need to figure out some, I wouldn't say a study, but what is the situation on the ground and what are the interventions, and I could speak to the SIPE project and see what can be done in terms of that. But if the person can leave a number that we can able to reach them, I'd very much be happy to do so.
All right, let's go back to the landline. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Roderick, I have a concern. Now, we speak all the time about predator larceny and sort, which is important. I am a farmer. I've been farming for almost 3/4 of my life. But I have a problem, not much with the predator larceny thing, but more with the aspect of other people, our farmers, animal farmers that sometimes have animals and they tie in the boundary to your land or close to your land where you're farming. And then sometimes as soon as the beasts escape from maybe where they were tied, they come into your land, they trample your crops, they eat your crops, they graze on your crops and everything. I think to me that's more dangerous than even the people that stealing. The people that stealing, they wait for when your crop ready, they take what they want and they go. But the animal, know it comes before the crop ready, damage it. Some of the crops that's ready, it may damage. And even sometimes the rope that it travel with may pull along or root up or damage some of the crops. So for me, I don't know what you could do about that in the sense of making it more serious with farmers that have animals tying it around people's garden and then they have to be compensated as well. Maybe there could be a law so they could be charged or then you pump the animal. I don't know if that law is still existing, or you could poison the animal also in your land. These cases, I don't know what best advice you have for that situation with animals problem, cattle and goats and things like that, damaging people's garden, which is just as dangerous as the man that's stealing your crop.
Thank you very much, caller.
It's very excellent, very good point. Now there are a couple of things on that. One, and to get through it swiftly, is that I support BD to have a thriving livestock industry in this country. Of course, the Ministry of Agriculture has to create better mechanisms to facilitate farmers who doesn't have land but want to get involved in livestock. I've mentioned that to the minister, and he has to find ways to look at that. I know he was in Venezuela recently, and he would have seen certain ways things have been done there. And let's come back, have a chat, and see how we can move forward. In fact, on a side note, I know even in Granby State, farmers were meeting me over the weekend and also speaking about the cutting down of certain economic crops for facilitating livestock holding. Of course, I support livestock, but we have to look at the detriment and what might be the best fit. There might have to be, government may have to find land that it has to facilitate housing or facilitate grazing of animals in such manner. So that's a different discussion we could look at in terms of an approach. Of course, sir, there is what you call the Crop Compensation Act, which deals specifically with damages, and of course, in the case of animals, of individuals damaging your crop. When you see such cases, it is in your power to report the matter to the police, and the police has all within its powers that act to deal with. There are a few things on that. If you have your smartphone, I have a camera, you can take photos. You would also need to get an appraiser. Normally, some of the retired extension officers, etc., can facilitate those processes so that they can assess the damage. You would know only recently in our last sittings of the Senate, they moved a motion asking the Senate for us to, as a government, to review the schedule, because it's 25 years since the schedule was reviewed. So the prices of the damaged crop there is like 25 years old, and we know the cost of things has increased. So this is something that needs to be upgraded, and I trust that the ministry already started working on this matter, because farmers are losing every day longer that this takes to happen. So yes, you can take action. I would suggest you take a photo. You once you know the people involved, you get somebody to do an assessment, you call the police, And of course, if you're not getting any results through this process, then you can always contact me. I'll contact your Ministry of Agriculture, and we would find a solution to get this thing going.
When earlier in the program you mentioned a more financial push toward the pre-deal licensing unit, well, the RGPF for the pre-deal licensing unit. Somebody on WhatsApp is asking, where will government get the $1 million to add? You as a representative should be seeking funding elsewhere for the farmers. That's part of being a representative. Government can do it all. Can you lead the charge?
Yeah. But it's a good point. It's a very good point. That the caller is the messenger is messaging to look at more public-private partnership, because you could say, well, the supermarkets are benefiting, so how do they contribute to this common good? We can say that, but at the same time, saying that the government cannot find funds, I think is also is an understatement. In the fact that you may realize that government will find funds for other things that, when you look at it, may not be at the pitch and the consequence, because this has serious consequence for our food security, our food safety, for export earnings of the country, and even the reputation of the country. So this rise almost to the arc of a pest infestation. It is a high level of risk involved, and at that stage, sometimes, if you want to look for funding, might be good, which will take months and months and months, whilst we suffer here. So we're not saying no. So, for example, you could look at it in different ways, but government has to put in some efforts there, because if our farmers decide, look, they cannot take it anymore, and they get out of crop, we are the same people that are going to put our hands up and say, government, look at what you're doing, you drop agriculture, we have to be importing so much goods and all of this. Is the consequence of that, because it's and when you're making an act, it's an obligation that you have also put on yourself. You are passing a law. It means that you have to put the systems in place to enforce it. Nobody asked you to put it. Technically, you could say that. So if I put it, you have an obligation to do it. But I think that there's opportunity for some level of private sector to support certain aspects of it. I believe that there are opportunities. But of course, we need to see a plan from the police, so you know what are the support areas. For example, I know Huggins, for example, and I will speak to that. I know I've been very supportive in terms of billboards and some PR support in terms of pre-deal licensing, partnering with the Ministry of Agriculture through this. So I know that for a fact.
Closing statement, Senator?
Yeah, well, what I want to say is that I appreciate also, this arrangement where we can able to communicate with the stakeholders. I really appreciate very much the feedback, the questions, and so on, because those things help to improve all of us in a broadest way. I want to say that whenever the next Senate is called, we have a few motions to address, one of which has to do with to expand the curriculum at the TAMCC, so that they can able to teach the whole fishing and fisheries, aquaculture, seamoss culture, and all of those related parts. The TAMCC is there, and we could able to do that since the closure of the farm school. We're also going to look at the price control for agriculture input, so we can control those prices rather than the arbitrary increases. So that is another area. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, how do we increase the police? We also are going to request in through some questions the corporate plans for agriculture, fishery, and lands. Let us see what those plans are to know if we're on track with what we are doing. And of course, as we know, we had the issue of training in agriculture. We need to know what has been happening with the human resource capital. So, for example, in the Ministry of Agriculture right now, the last major hire that was done in terms of planned quarantine was 25 years ago, in terms of a degreed person. So if this person is going to retire maybe in the next 5-6 years, what is the plan for building that capacity within the Ministry of Agriculture to make sure that pest and disease management in this country is in the right? So these are the things. But I want to say lastly that the Ministry of Legal Affairs is very significant in all of the things that is happening in terms of rules and regulations. And so I think we also want to show that the Ministry of Legal Affairs is really on top of the game. And of course, our public servants in particular, who are there and observe opportunities because sometimes they will see something need to happen, but it cannot just happen like that. You need to modify the law. You need to change some SRO or something like that. They must be forthcoming and let us work together so that we can better able to deliver on a lot of things that we may see as a bottleneck, but it's really not a bottleneck because we didn't fix the law and make it work for us. So these are just some of my comments, and I want to wish everyone a very good month and stay safe, continue to stay safe. And of course, we know the hurricane season is coming up, and make sure that we are ready for this event, should we have any unfortunate situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator St. Clair. Always a pleasure hearing from you, sir. We'll definitely keep in touch.
Good.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Farmer and Fisherfolk representative in the Senate, the Honorable Roderick St. Clair. We thank him for being our guest. My endeavor is to have him on at least once a month. The plan is the first Monday of each month, so we can get some of the latest and his plans going forward, what he's been able to accomplish for our farmers and fisherfolk island-wide. So next month, God willing, once again. So thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning into To The Point. It's time for me to head on out and make way for Joseph, who's up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing. Bye-bye, everyone.